What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Azeem USA. I am beyond hyped for today's deep dive because, we are unpacking what might genuinely be one of the most reality-bending product drops we have seen in recent tech history.
Oh, absolutely. It completely breaks the matrix of what we expect from this company.
Right. So our mission today is to completely tear apart the newly announced 2026 MacBook Neo. You've been flooding the comments, asking us to figure out if this is the ultimate budget-conscious laptop for a modern workflow, or, and this is the big question, if the hardware compromises are just way too steep.
And to do that properly, we are pulling from a very specific stack of sources that you all actually pointed us towards.
Yeah, we've got Apple's official press release, which is titled Say Hello to MacBook Neo. We also have the incredibly detailed, ridiculously exhaustive technical specifications page that was scraped directly from Apple's Indian storefront.
Which is where you find the real truth.
Exactly. And finally, we're using a hands-on review transcript from Marquise Brownlee, MKBHD.
It's just a perfect curation of material. You get the highly polished marketing narrative from the PR, you get the raw, legally binding technical reality from the spec sheet, and then Marquise gives us that immediate, tactile, real-world reaction. We need all three to actually understand what this machine represents.
Totally. And before we jump into the absolute insanity of this price tag, just a quick reminder. If you want us to answer your specific questions live during this deep dive, drop a super chat.
Yeah, that pushes your question right to the front of the queue.
Right. And if you're watching this on the replay, hitting that super thanks button is a huge way to support the channel. Plus, channel members get those exclusive Azeem USA badges and emotes in the chat, so definitely consider hitting that join button.
Okay, we need to talk about the price.
Yes. Let's drop the hook. We are looking at a brand new all-aluminum Mac laptop that starts at $599 US.
It is wild to say out loud.
It really is. And if you're looking at the Indian pricing from the storefront source, that is 69,900 rupees. But wait, if you qualify for education pricing,
it drops to $499, or 59,900 rupees.
$499 for an aluminum MacBook. It is a psychological barrier that Apple has not crossed with a laptop in, maybe ever, or at least a very long time.
What's fascinating here is that this specific price point, that $599 tier, it perfectly matches the famously high-value Mac Mini.
Right.
For years, the Mac Mini has been the undisputed floor for entering macOS if you were on a strict budget. But it always came with a hidden tax.
For peripherals.
Exactly. You had to bring your own monitor, your own keyboard, your own mouse. By offering a complete, portable, all-in-one laptop experience at that exact same price, Apple is fundamentally shifting the entry point for their entire computing ecosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this name first. Even Marquise Brownlee was surprised by the branding in his review transcript. All the supply chain leaks, all the rumors, they all suggested Apple was just going to call this the MacBook.
Just a return to the standard name?
Yeah, a return to the modifier-free name. But instead, they went with MacBook Neo. Obviously, Neo means new, but it signals a completely distinct tier in the lineup that sits structurally below the MacBook Air.
Why introduce a new naming convention when your laptop matrix is already so crowded?
Exactly my question.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is almost certainly a strategic play for the education sector. Marquise points this out perfectly. For the better part of a decade, Chrome OS has had an absolute stranglehold on classrooms.
Oh yeah, Chromebooks are everywhere.
They're cheap, they are heavily commoditized, and they are so easy for school IT departments to provision via Google Workspace. Schools buy them in fleets of tens of thousands.
So the MacBook Neo is Apple's highly targeted maneuver to recapture that K-12 and higher education market.
Right. At $499 for students, they aren't just making a cheaper Mac, they are making a direct Chromebook killer.
The Neo branding kind of separates it from the premium expectations of the Air or the Pro lines. It manages expectations while signaling a fresh start in schools. They want to get users hooked on macOS as early as possible.
And the pricing strategy gets even more aggressive when you look at how it cannibalizes Apple's own product lineup.
Yes, MKBHD breaks down this fascinating hardware math equation in the source. Let's say you're a student. You look at a base iPad, which starts at $329.
Sounds like the ultimate budget play.
It does. But an iPad without a keyboard is essentially just a media consumption pain. If you actually want to write code, type term papers or do heavy research, you have to add the official Magic Keyboard folio.
Which is another $250.
Exactly. Suddenly, you are paying nearly $600 for a 128-gigabyte iPad running an older A16 chip, and it's a mobile operating system that still struggles with window management.
The MacBook Neo completely obliterates that specific iPad value proposition. It gives you a real unified laptop experience. You get a full desktop-class operating system, a robust file manager, all for the exact same total cost of ownership.
It really forces you to consider your own buying habits.
It does. You have to ask yourself, if you have a strict $600 budget, do you piece together a modular tablet with a snap-on keyboard? Or do you buy a dedicated, unified, all-aluminum clamshell?
For a massive segment of you watching this right now, especially if you are in academic or clerical environments, the rigid laptop form factor just makes more ergonomic sense. I would choose the traditional clamshell every single time for productivity.
Me too. And that brings us to the beating heart of the Neo, which honestly might be the wildest part of the entire spec sheet.
Oh man, yes. The MacBook Neo is powered by the A18 Pro chip. Just to be completely clear, this is the exact same silicon architecture that powered the flagship iPhone 16 Pro models.
They literally took a smartphone system on a chip and dropped it directly onto a laptop logic board to run macOS Tahoe.
It is the ultimate flex of Apple's unified silicon architecture. Because they designed the instruction sets and the compilers for both iOS and macOS, that transition is seamless.
But we need to be very precise about the physical silicon here. This is not the identical perfect yield chip you would find in last year's highest-end iPhone.
Right.
This is a binned version of the A18 Pro.
Which makes sense. For those of you listening who follow the semiconductor space, you know that TSMC's 3nm N3E node doesn't produce 100% perfect wafers.
Yield economics always dictate that some chips will have microscopic defects.
Exactly. So instead of scrapping an entire chip just because one single GPU core failed quality assurance, Apple fuses off that defective core and sells it as a lower-tier component.
It is a masterclass in supply chain efficiency and cost recovery. By repurposing these binned A18 Pro chips, Apple can aggressively subsidize that $499 education price without destroying their profit margins.
According to the Indian storefront spec sheet we have, the A18 Pro in the MacBook Neo features a 5-core GPU. That's down from the 6-core GPU found in the perfect yield mobile chips.
But it retains the standard 6-core CPU configuration, which is 2 high-performance cores and 4 high-efficiency cores, and it keeps the 16-core neural engine.
So what does an iPhone chip running a desktop OS actually feel like? MKBHD dubbed this the Safari book.
Which is incredibly accurate.
I think is the most accurate moniker we could give it.
Yeah.
This machine is architected for web-based workflows. It is for managing Google Docs, chewing through massive Excel spreadsheets, handling heavy email clients, and running web apps.
It is all about matching the silicon to the workload. Apple's press release makes a very specific claim here. They state the Neo is up to 50% faster for everyday tasks than the best-selling PC equipped with an Intel Core Ultra 5 processor.
That is a massive indictment of x86 efficiency. An ARM-based chip that was originally constrained by a smartphone's thermal envelope is outperforming traditional laptop processors in burst workloads.
But we have to be realistic here. We need to clearly warn everyone listening.
Yes, please.
If your workflow involves compiling massive code bases in Xcode, running multiple virtual machines, or scrubbing through 4K multicam timelines in Final Cut Pro, the A18 Pro will choke.
It's just not meant for that.
It lacks the memory bandwidth and the sustained thermal headroom of the M-series chips.
You bring up thermal headroom, which leads perfectly into the physical design of the Neo. Because it's utilizing hyper-efficient mobile silicon designed for a pocketable device, it doesn't generate the kind of localized heat that requires active cooling.
Meaning it is completely fanless.
The MacBook Neo is a sealed solid-state system. It operates in absolute dead silence, regardless of how many Chrome tabs you have open.
That thermal efficiency is the key that unlocked this entire design. Markey brought up a brilliant historical parallel in his review. He compared the Neo to the original 12-inch MacBook released way back in 2015.
Oh man, the 12-inch MacBook. That machine is such a fascinating cautionary tale in Apple's history.
It really is.
It was impossibly thin, gorgeously designed, and conceptually years ahead of its time. But it was completely ruined by a terrible, throttling 1.1 gigahertz Intel Core M processor.
Because Intel's architecture at the time simply could not scale down to a fanless 5-watt thermal envelope without aggressively thermal throttling. You would open 3 web pages, the logic board would hit 90 degrees Celsius, and the processor would dynamically downclock to a crawl just to prevent the chassis from burning your lap.
So the 2026 MacBook Neo is really the successful reincarnation of that exact 2015 dream. Apple has always wanted to build a sub-3-pound, razor-thin, fanless wedge. They just had to wait for their internal silicon team to catch up to the industrial design team's ambitions.
And looking at the build quality, it is genuinely impressive for a sub-$600 machine.
Historically, budget laptops are characterized by flexing plastic decks, creaky hinges, and terrible trackpads. But the spec sheet confirms the Neo utilizes a durable, all-aluminum enclosure.
And notably, it is made of 60% recycled material by weight, which the press release boasts is the most recycled content ever used in a single Apple product.
Plus, it weighs in at just 1.23 kilograms, which is roughly 2.7 pounds. Maintaining a CNC-milled aluminum chassis at this price point is a huge competitive advantage. It retains that premium, rigid, torsional strength that MacBooks are known for.
But what really separates the Neo structurally from the Air and the Pro lines is the aesthetic, the color palette. Apple is offering this in silver, blush, citrus, and indigo.
The colors. I am so glad they are leaning back into color. The citrus is a highly saturated, energetic yellow-orange, and the indigo is a deep, almost nautical blue.
It feels like a subtle nod to the incredibly colorful iBook G3 clamshells that dominated schools in the early 2000s.
Absolutely. But here is the design quirk that MKDHD got really excited about, and this is a massive departure for Apple's industrial design. The physical keycaps on the keyboard are actually tinted to perfectly match the color of the laptop's chassis.
It is a visually striking choice. It creates a highly cohesive, monochromatic aesthetic when the laptop is open. Historically, Apple has strictly utilized black keycaps on their silver and space gray laptops, or white keycaps on older polycarbonate models.
It's a first for the MacBook line.
By color matching the keys to the blush pink or the indigo blue aluminum, it softens the machine. It makes it look more approachable, more playful, and deliberately less corporate than a space black MacBook Pro.
It is a clear psychological signal to the younger demographic they are targeting. But as we'll discuss in a minute, those tinted keycaps hide a fairly significant compromise.
They definitely do.
Before we get to the cuts, though, let's look at the display. Because you're spending all your time staring at this panel, and the specs here are surprisingly robust for a budget machine.
Break it down for us.
We have a 13-inch display. The Indian specs specifically listed as 33.02 centimeters diagonally. It's a liquid retina panel pushing a resolution of 2408 by 1506 pixels, with 500 nits of peak brightness and support for 1 billion colors.
The 500 nits of brightness is the critical spec there. In the $500 to $600 Windows PC market, you are routinely subjected to 250 nit or 300 nit displays that look incredibly washed out.
Especially in a brightly lit classroom or a sunlit cafe.
Exactly. Guaranteeing 500 nits ensures the display remains legible and punchy in harsh lighting conditions. Furthermore, the 2408 by 1506 resolution yields a high enough pixel density that text rendering will remain incredibly crisp. That is vital for a machine engineered primarily for reading and writing.
And here's a design detail from the MKBHD video that will actually delight a lot of you listening. There is no notch on this display.
The notch is gone.
It features a completely uninterrupted rectangular display. Apple has housed the 1080p FaceTime HD camera within a standard top bezel.
That is a fascinating reversal of their current design language, but it makes total economic sense. On premium laptops, Apple uses the notch to push the screen real estate to the absolute edge of the lid, maximizing the pixel count while housing complex camera modules.
But cutting a notch into an LCD panel increases manufacturing complexity and reduces yield.
Exactly. By reverting to a standard uniform bezel, they dramatically lower the cost of the display assembly. And frankly, a large portion of the user base strongly prefers the uninterrupted top edge anyway.
Oh, without a doubt. Add in the dual side-firing speakers with spatial audio and Dolby Atmos support, paired with a directional beam-forming dual mic array, and you have a phenomenal media consumption device.
It is perfectly optimized for remote Zoom lectures, FaceTime calls, or just watching movies in a dorm room.
And that media experience is backed by what might be the best battery life in its class. We have to frame this around the mobile processor. Because you are pairing a hyper-efficient A18 Pro chip with a massive 36.5 watt-hour laptop battery behind it, Apple claims up to 16 hours of wireless web browsing or video streaming.
If you do the math on that, 36.5 watt-hours divided by 16 hours means the entire system is drawing an average of roughly 2.2 watts under load. That is astonishing efficiency.
It really is.
It means a student can genuinely leave their charger in their dorm room, attend classes all day, work in the library, and still have enough reserve power for entertainment at night.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. You cannot build a premium-feeling aluminum Apple laptop for $599 without taking a machete to the spec sheet.
The compromises have to exist somewhere to subsidize that cost.
Right. So let's transition into a critical analysis of the hardware limits. What are the strict, non-negotiable trade-offs you are accepting if you choose the Neo over, say, a MacBook Air?
The primary and perhaps most restrictive limitation is the system memory. The MacBook Neo ships with exactly 8 GB of unified memory.
And that's it.
That is the ceiling. There are no build-to-order options to increase this. You cannot upgrade to 16 GB. If your daily workflow routinely exceeds an 8 GB memory footprint, this machine is fundamentally incompatible with your needs. It's automatically disqualified.
But we have to push back a little on Apple's long-standing narrative that 8 GB of unified memory is equivalent to 16 GB on a PC.
It's a marketing line.
It is. While macOS is incredible at memory compression and utilizing the ultra-fast SSD for swap memory, relying on swap means you are constantly writing temporary data to the internal storage.
Which brings us to the storage bottleneck.
Exactly. The base $599 model only includes a 256 GB SSD. You can upgrade to a 512 GB SSD, but that is the absolute maximum. There is no 1 terabyte option.
Which exacerbates the memory issue entirely. If you are constantly hitting the 8 GB RAM limit, the system pages out to that 256 GB SSD. Over years of heavy use, continuous swap writing can accelerate the degradation of the NAND flash storage.
This machine is architected with the assumption that you will rely heavily on iCloud, Google Drive, or external storage for your heavy files, keeping the local drive relatively empty to facilitate that swap memory space.
The compromises extend to the physical interaction points as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mark Rees reviewing the trackpad earlier.
Right. The trackpad is not what Mac users are used to.
For nearly a decade, Apple has utilized Force Touch trackpads. Those are solid-state pieces of glass that don't actually move, but use an electromagnetic haptic engine to simulate a click.
It's basically magic.
It is. But the MacBook Neo strips that out. It reverts to an old-school mechanical diving board trackpad. You actually have to physically depress the glass to register a click, meaning it requires more force at the top of the pad near the keyboard than it does at the bottom edge.
The mechanical trackpad is a massive cost-saving measure. It eliminates the expensive haptic linear actuator and the complex pressure sensors. MKBHD noted in his review that it feels fine, and for a first-time Mac user migrating from a cheap PC, it will likely still feel superior to the competition.
But if you are accustomed to the uniform click-anywhere magic of a Force Touch trackpad, the mechanical hinge is going to feel like a distinct regression.
And the keyboard has an equally glaring omission. Those beautifully tinted color-matched keycaps I got so excited about earlier, they are hiding the fact that the keyboard has absolutely no backlight.
None at all.
The tech specs carefully list it as a standard Magic Keyboard, explicitly omitting the word backlit that is found on every other Mac in the lineup. If you are typing a paper in a dark room or a dimly lit lecture hall, you are relying entirely on the screen's glow to see the keys.
Removing the LED matrix and the light guide panel beneath the keyboard assembly is another classic supply chain cost reduction. But perhaps the most punitive segmentation choice Apple made regarding the keyboard involves security.
This one is a massive catch.
The technical specifications reveal a highly specific caveat regarding Touch ID. The $599 base model with the 256 GB drive does not have Touch ID.
It just has a standard lock key in the top right corner.
Exactly. Which means you are typing in your password every single time you wake the laptop, every time you use Apple Pay, and every time you autofill a password. If you want the biometric convenience of a fingerprint authentication, Apple forces you to upgrade to the 512 GB model.
It is classic Apple upselling. They are gatekeeping a ubiquitous quality of life feature to push the average transaction value higher.
It's frustrating, but it also ties into the architecture of the logic board. Implementing Touch ID requires routing dedicated hardware lanes to the secure Enclave processor within the A18 Pro chip. By omitting it on the base model, they streamline the manufacturing of that specific entry-level logic board.
Okay, we need to talk about the ports, because this is the biggest catch. and it's the compromise that is going to actively infuriate power users.
The port situation is rough.
First of all, the Neo abandons the MagSafe charger. There is no magnetic breakaway cable. You are charging exclusively via USB-C. You get exactly 2 USB-C ports, both located on the left side of the machine, alongside a 3.5mm headphone jack.
But if you read the fine print in the Indian spec sheet, those 2 USB-C ports are fundamentally different from one another.
This is wild to me. Break down this USB speed discrepancy.
This is a vital detail hidden deep in the specs, and it stems directly from the fact that they are using a repurposed smartphone chip. The leftmost port is a USB 3 port. It's capable of up to 10 gigabit per second data transfer, and it is the only port that supports the single external 4K display output.
Okay, 10 gigabits is fine for a budget machine.
Right. But the rightmost port is incredibly slow. It is relegated to USB 2 speeds, which maxes out at a staggering 480 megabits per second.
480 megabits per second.
Oh.
We were talking about data transfer speeds from over 2 decades ago. For you listening, what this practically means is that you have to pay strict attention to which side of the laptop you plug into.
Your peripheral topology matters now.
If you plug an external SSD into the left port, your files transfer rapidly. If you accidentally plug that exact same drive into the port 1 inch to the right, a 10 gigabyte video file will suddenly take 10 times longer to transfer. Both support charging, but data transfer is a minefield.
The architecture explains the bottleneck. The A18 Pro was engineered for an iPhone, which historically only required a single high-speed I/O controller for its USB-C port. The silicon simply does not possess the internal PCIe lanes or the dual high-speed Thunderbolt controllers found on an M-series chip.
So Apple routed the sole high-speed lane to the primary left port.
Exactly. To provide a second port for charging and basic peripherals like a mouse, they had to utilize whatever legacy low-bandwidth I/O capacity remained on the chip, resulting in a USB 2 bottleneck.
It is a harsh limitation, but as you said, it is the physical reality of dropping an iPhone brain into a laptop body. Now, despite these hardware bottlenecks, the software experience is where Apple is really trying to bridge the gap.
Out of the box, the Neo runs macOS Tahoe, and Apple is leaning heavily into Apple Intelligence as a core selling point.
Which raises an important question. How does an 8 GB machine with a mobile processor handle modern AI workloads, especially when we see PCs requiring 16 GB just to run basic Copilot features?
Apple's answer lies in the 16-core neural engine embedded in the A18 Pro. Despite the low price, it is an incredibly capable NPU. It's capable of 35 trillion operations per second.
That's massive for AI on a budget.
It allows the Neo to execute Apple's quantized on-device AI tools natively without constantly offloading to the cloud. Get full access to the Writing Tools suite for real-time text summarization, Genmoji for dynamic image generation, and the Cleanup tool for localized photo editing, all running seamlessly.
And doing that all locally, entirely on device, on a $599 machine is a massive win for user privacy.
It really is.
But the software story isn't just about AI. It's about ecosystem gravity. The press release explicitly frames the MacBook Neo as acting as an extension of the user's phone.
The iPhone synergy is the real selling point.
It supports iPhone mirroring, allowing you to control your phone directly from the macOS desktop while the phone remains locked in your bag. It utilizes Universal Clipboard, letting you copy text on your phone and instantly paste it into a document on the Neo.
And it relies heavily on Instant Hotspot, automatically bridging the Mac onto the iPhone's cellular network without navigating any menus.
It is the absolute pinnacle of ecosystem lock-in. By engineering Machine at this price point, Apple is targeting the exact demographic of iPhone users who historically opted for inexpensive Windows laptops because a $1,000 MacBook Air was just financially out of reach.
The Neo bridges that gap. Once a user experiences the frictionless continuity of AirDrop, universal control, and shared iCloud architecture between their phone and their laptop, the friction of ever leaving the Apple ecosystem becomes astronomically high.
So what does this all mean for you as you evaluate this stack of sources? The MacBook Neo is a highly specific tool. It's a beautifully crafted, limited-spec machine meant for students, basic web browsing, and acting as a companion to an iPhone.
It is a masterclass in compromise.
If you need robust multitasking, if you manage large local files, or if you simply require a backlit keyboard to work at night, this machine will frustrate you. The USB 2 port alone is a deal-breaker for anyone doing local media management.
However, if you evaluate the Neo strictly within the parameters for which it was designed, it is a formidable piece of hardware. If you are an academic relying on web portals, a writer living in Google Docs, or an iPhone user looking for an inexpensive, premium-feeling portal into Mac, the Neo presents an almost unbeatable value proposition.
Especially considering you get a fanless aluminum chassis and 16 hours of battery life.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, though, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on. Something that goes beyond the spec sheet of the Neo.
Think about what this machine actually represents at a silicon level.
We are now living in an era where the exact same processor that sits in your pocket, passively cooled inside a smartphone, possesses the architectural density to run a full-scale desktop-class operating system on a laptop.
It's driving a 13-inch high-resolution display, executing localized machine learning models, and outperforming dedicated laptop processors from just a few years ago.
It is a profound shift in computing paradigms. Historically, there was an insurmountable wall between mobile architectures and desktop architectures. The Neo proves that wall has essentially collapsed.
If we are now at a point where a bin smartphone chip can comfortably power a viable daily driver laptop today, how much longer will the dividing line between mobile computing and desktop computing even exist?
We are rapidly approaching a singularity where the physical form factor of the device, whether it's a phone, a tablet, or a laptop, is merely a different shell housing the exact same centralized brain.
It completely changes how we view hardware upgrades moving forward.
It really does. Thank you all for bringing these sources to us and joining us on this deep dive into the MacBook Neo. We hope this breakdown helped you map out whether that $599 price tag fits into your workflow or if you're better off waiting.
It's definitely going to shake up the market.
Absolutely. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Azeem USA if you haven't already, and we will catch you in the next stream. Keep digging into those specs.